The same thing that killed his father also killed John Ritter. For 30 years, the genetic time bomb was ticking. Everyone saw the indications on his last day, but they didn't understand what they meant. Even the doctors in the emergency room made a mistake. Dozens of people observed his last moments. A few took notes on their observations. On a phone call, his final remarks to Amy Yasbeck were captured. The autopsy's startling findings permanently altered how hospitals handle chest discomfort. The $14 million settlement serves as evidence of the actual events of that day. On September 17, 1948, John Ritter was born in Burbank, California, at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, where he would pass away 54 years later. He was born. His mother, Dorothy Fay, starred in vintage westerns, and his father, Tex Ritter, was a well-known singing cowboy. John was surrounded by lights, cameras, and celebrity from the start, but there were shadows in that radiance. Before he became a household figure, his life would take many tragic turns, but it started among Hollywood royalty. John was only a teenager when one of those traumatic events occurred. A rock, or possibly a piece of metal, smashed through the glass of the car he was in with some pals and hit him in the right eye. It was more than a simple scrape. His retina and iris suffered irreversible damage. The majority of his vision in that eye was gone, and had a malformed pupil for the remainder of his life. He became awake as a result of the injuries, but it also affected his theatrical presence. Even though he lost some of his vision, he learned how to act with emotion and presence. Fans saw the change in his eyes in close-ups, even if he didn't discuss it much. Paradoxically, John wasn't pressured into acting despite having parents in Hollywood. His father actually cautioned him against entering the entertainment industry. Ritter, Tex, had witnessed the industry's highs and lows and wished for John to find a secure job, perhaps in law or politics. His mom was worried too. They made it apparent that the road was difficult, but they wouldn't stop him if he insisted. John attended the University of Southern California to study psychology in an effort to please his parents, but he was secretly drawn to the theater. John had previously demonstrated leadership qualities in high school. At Hollywood High, he was voted president of the student body. Even in college, he was witty, and good with people. He continued to concentrate on his studies. The theater bug, however, continued to bite. When he began performing in school plays, his charisma and innate timing made him stand out. He was urged to pursue it seriously by friends and teachers, but he was hesitant. It wasn't rebellion. Confusion was the cause. He struggled to balance his family's expectations with his own desires. Everything changed because of something odd and basic. He had an appearance on The Dating Game in 1966. It was supposed to be enjoyable. He was being himself, not pretending. However, he won the episode with his charm and wit. The award? Journey to Lake Havasu. It was a pointless journey. How he felt on stage was what counted. He felt a fire ignited by the incident. He quickly changed his degree to theater arts and enrolled in acting courses. The presence on that one game show started a chain reaction. He might never have achieved stardom without it. However, he did something that very few people are aware of before he became famous. John embarked on a European theater tour from 1968 to 1969. He gave plays in Germany, Holland, Scotland, and England. He wasn't only taking in the scenery. He worked, studied, and took in various performance techniques. He appeared in the films As You Like It, Glass Menagerie, and Love Letters. There was no glamour here, it was self-control. He learned how to adjust, broaden his skill set, and perform in front of new audiences. It gave him a sense of confidence that a novice would never get from American television. However, fate dealt him a devastating blow, even those formative years of performing. When John was working on the Waltons in 1974, he received a phone call that completely altered his life. One day after New Year's, his father, Tex Ritter, passed away unexpectedly at the age of 68. It was a tragic loss. Tex was not just a celebrity. He served as John's mentor, hero, and advisor. John had just begun to gain his father's respect when he left. To make matters worse, aortic dissection was thought to be the reason of Tex's death. John would pass away from the same ailment decades later. The genetic twist was nasty. That bound father and son together in sorrow and fame. Ironically, John almost didn't get to meet the Waltons. In 1972, he was chosen to play Reverend Matthew Fordwick. The position was initially intended to be a one-time event. His performance changed the fact that he was not a member of the main cast. He brought warmth, humor, and plausibility to a persona that was previously rigid. His admirers adored him. He was repeatedly invited back by writers. He had made appearances in 18 episodes by the time he left the show in 1976. He developed as a result of the job, but more significantly, it allowed him to experiment with different parts. He might have lost the opportunity to try out for the program that made all the difference if he had been bound by a contract. That program wasn't a movie. His first cinematic encounter was rather unmemorable. The story was strange. He starred in Disney's The Barefoot Executive in 1971. The chimp was able to choose popular television programs. John portrayed a TV executive's obnoxious nephew. The film didn't make much of an impression, and the character was uninteresting. His career wasn't harmed, but it wasn't helped either. He then alternated between appearing as a guest on shows such as The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Kajak, and MASH. Although he didn't become famous from these roles, they did help him gain confidence and skill. The audition that altered the course of television history then came. ABC made the decision to adapt the British sitcom Man About the House for American viewers in 1975. Three's Company would be its new name. For the part of Jack Tripper, more than 50 actors auditioned. A young Billy Crystal was among them, but John Ritter was the most notable. Charm, physical humor, and impeccable timing were all necessary for the job. He had everything. The initial pilot was turned down. The program was then reworked and recast. At every turn, John had to defend his position. Delays and uncertainty plagued the project even after it was cast. Late at night, Silverman was looking through audition recordings when he unexpectedly caught sight of Suzanne Summers. She was someone he had seen on The Tonight Show. She was on set in less than a day. When the cameras rolled, it was magic, but no one knew how her tape had been overlooked the first time. Her charm and timing were perfect. Chrissy Snow's birth marked the beginning of the triumvirate that would come to define the program. People were unsure on what to think of the show when it debuted on March 15, 1977. Is a straight man feigning homosexuality in order to live with two unmarried women? It was scandalous. To keep from being evicted, Jack Tripper had to tell Stanley Roper a falsehood. And the notion of three single individuals living together in the same apartment, the censors were sweating just from that. It was considered vulgar by some. Others believed it made fun of homosexuality, but the viewers, they were unable to get enough. It started out at number 11 in the ratings and continued to rise. The show made no effort to be profound. It made use of slapstick, puns, and miscommunications. It was attacked by feminist groups. Conservatives detested it. However, the audience continued to watch. It was larger than anyone had anticipated due to the controversy. Then followed the blast that nearly destroyed everything. Suzanne Summers demanded more in 1980. She wanted $150,000 plus a portion of the earnings, but she was only getting $30,000 per episode. The producers rejected it, even though it matched John Ritter's contract. Things quickly became ugly. Summers began to lose shots. Negotiations were treated like a power move by her husband, Alan Hamill. ABC, however, did not blink. She was let go. Nevertheless, she had to complete the season according to the contract. They kept her away from DeWitt and Ritter. Her sequences were filmed by herself. There are only quick phone conversations at the conclusion of each episode. No jokes or laughter. She only brought a wardrobe assistant and a bodyguard. She and DeWitt eventually discussed it on a talk program in 2012 after more than 30 years of silence. Three's Corporation was a behemoth by then. The show was widely broadcast. In the top 10 ratings, it was sold to syndication. The face of it all was John Ritter, but there was a cost to being Jack Tripper. Ritter was unable to get away from him. He had worked on the Waltons, received theatrical training, and possessed genuine acting abilities. It didn't matter, though. Instead of John, the director saw Jack. He experimented and played various parts, but the vision persisted. He remained even as the show grew stale in later years. Despite their inability to view him as anything else, people adored him. Finally, in 1983, he received recognition from the industry. The Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Comedy went to Ritter. He received the Emmy a year later. The victory was enormous. Despite the odds, he received recognition for a production that many critics deemed to be cheap. He spoke politely. He expressed gratitude to everyone. The fact that people ultimately realized he wasn't just toppling over furniture, however, was the true triumph. Few could match his level of performance. He had exceptional timing, facial emotions, and physical control. With these honors, he joins the greats. Success, not just for sitcom stars, is brittle. ABC attempted to maintain the enthusiasm with Three's a Crowd in 1984, was now Ritter's show. Ritter's show. Jack Tripper, who was older, lived above his restaurant with his girlfriend and had to cope with her inquisitive father. But there was a problem. There was no longer any chemistry. The audience didn't relate. By scheduling it against the A-Team, ABC made matters worse. One of the biggest hits on NBC. The original cast was likewise marginalized by the show. No word was given to Joyce DeWitt. According to reports, she showed up for Jack's new love interest's auditions. It hurt. There was only one guest appearance, Richard Klein. Ritter insisted on a full season guarantee, but the show only received 22 episodes and a 13-episode renewal. ABC declined. Ritter's reign as a sitcom came to an end when the program quietly died. He didn't give up, though. He starred in Hooperman in 1987, a program that Stephen Bacco built. This was not like the others. Ritter portrayed Harry Hooperman, a police officer who struggled to balance love, work, and tenants after inheriting a dilapidated building. It was a mix of comedy and drama. He was spot on. He received accolades from critics. In addition to winning a People's Choice Award, he received Golden Globe and Emmy nominations. However, the ratings weren't consistent. After 2 seasons, it disappeared. Ritter gained greater respect as a result, yet still caught between the possibility for drama and sitcom fame. Then, in 1990, came Problem Child. It was an odd move. Ritter portrayed a kind man who takes in a crazy, even malevolent child. Critics detested it. It received a dismal 0% rating from Rotten Tomatoes. It was deemed cruel by some. Even though the sequence wasn't in the film, a promotional image featuring a cat in a tumble dryer sparked animal rights concerns, but the public didn't care. On a budget of under $11 million, it made $72.02 million. Critics rolled their eyes, but Ritter came back for the sequel. It gave him something tangible, oddly enough. He got to know his future wife and co-star, Amy Yasbeck. It was a terrible period for Ritter, but the films became cult favorites. He put his all into the jokes, even though they were cheesy. He made another attempt with Hearts of Fire in 1992. He portrayed a conservative political assistant who develops feelings for Marky Post's leftist journalist. Washington, D.C. was where the performance began. Despite having a talented ensemble, including Billy Bob Thornton, it didn't work out. In an attempt to change things up, they shifted the scene to a tiny village in Season 2. It nearly survived, though. By the end of its 3-season run, it was obvious. Simply said, there was no magic. Viewers didn't pay attention, and Ritter couldn't regain his former level of success in sitcoms. Then an unforeseen event occurred. Billy Bob Thornton starred him in Sling Blade in 1996. Ritter portrayed Vaughn, a quiet, outspoken gay store manager who stands by Carl, the main character. This was no joke. This was silent, unadulterated drama. The movie was shot in less than a month and was produced on a shoestring budget of less than $1 million. The critics adored it. Everyone was astounded by Ritter's performance. Behind the scenes, there was conflict. It didn't appear on film that Ritter didn't like the haircut they gave him. Ritter demonstrated his depth, and Sling Blade won an Oscar. In October 1977, the same year that his television series Three's Company took the world by storm, John Ritter wed actress Nancy Morgan. Though from the outside, it appeared to be a fairy tale. Tyler was born in 1985, Carly in 1982, and Jason in 1980. Everything appeared ideal for a while, but notoriety comes with a price. Their marital problems were getting worse by the late 1980s. They gradually drifted apart due to the demands of Hollywood, never-ending schedules, and life in the spotlight. By 1993, they were no longer together. When the divorce was formally announced in September 1996, there was no unpleasant publicity or unpleasant fallout, just two people quietly understanding they were not meant to be together. Their kids lived near both parents, and Nancy continued to encourage John's career. Their breakup remained courteous, discreet, and grounded in a world where celebrity splits sometimes degenerate into destructive relationships. However, something unexpected was starting to happen as John's first marriage was coming to an end. He got to know actress Amy Yasbeck on the production of Problem Child in 1990. They clicked right away. John discovered Amy hadn't eaten during a light-hearted table read at the director's residence and gave her a cream cheese bagel. Something larger was ignited by that small moment. They joked together, filmed together, and developed a bond that subtly developed behind the scenes over the course of the following few months. Amy later claimed that John taught her physical humor, and they both had a strong passion for vintage Hollywood blockbusters. The emotional distance between John and Nancy had already taken its toll, even if he was still married at the time. Although he divorced Amy in 1996, his relationship with her remained secret for several years. They took their time. It wasn't tabloid love when they eventually got married in 1999, 9 years after they first met. It was based on mutual trust, genuine and earned. John's children never played a supporting role in his narrative. They had their own challenging lives. Jason pursued acting in the same way as his father, appearing in programs such as Parenthood and Raising Dion. He developed a career on talent and received Emmy nominations, not a legacy. Choosing a different path, Carly became a folk singer and put out her first CD in 2013. Initially avoiding the limelight, Tyler relocated to Argentina to teach before returning to play in Arrow and the McCarthys. Stella, who was born in 1998, went through a transition and is currently living as Noah Lee Ritter. Many were taken aback by Noah's 2016 public coming out at the age of 18, but his siblings fully supported him. The Ritter children have experienced personal transformation, loss, celebrity, and divorce. They remained close throughout it all. Every one of them embodies John's legacy, kindness, humor, and unwavering love for family. Rebuilding was more important than romance when John and Amy Yasbeck eventually got married. September 18, 1999 was the day they were married. Ohio's Murphy Theater in Wilmington. The location was rich in charm, history, and significance, and was almost a century old. Their daughter, Stella, was born on September 11, 1998, a year prior. In a week, that amounted to 3 birthdays. Stella on the 11th, John on the 17th, and Amy on the 12th. It seemed as though life itself was being celebrated at their wedding. There was nothing ostentatious about the ceremony. It was intimate, and loving. Amy subsequently remarked that the entire day felt wonderful because of John's friendliness and jokes. That historic theater was more than simply a place to them. It represented second chances, timing, and all that matters when family is left behind and stardom wanes. The quietest chapter turned became the loudest in 2016, years later. After years of avoiding the spotlight, Stella Ritter declared her transition and started living as Ritter, Noah Lee. She turned 18 on that day. In addition to the fact that her father was well known, the announcement made headlines since hardly nobody anticipated it. The Ritter family, however, did not recoil. Amy proudly and lovingly supported her kid. Without hesitation, his siblings pledged their support. Everyone close to John agrees that he would have survived. Without hesitation, he would have given Noah a hug. At the age of 25, Noah leads a modest existence in Los Angeles. He is not seeking notoriety. He's just being himself, which is perhaps the most courageous thing he can do in Hollywood. John was back on top just a year before he passed away. He made a comeback to television in September 2002, appearing on Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. He was too old, according to some, to make a comeback. They were mistaken. As Paul Hennessy, the overbearing father attempting to navigate the turbulence of adolescence, he was adored by audiences. The presentation combined genuine emotion with humor, and John gave it a smooth texture. It had already taken home the Best New Comedy People's Choice Award by 2003. Ritter had returned, but not in the role of Jack Tripper. He had changed. His warmth was deeper, his timing more precise. In America and Europe, families started watching the show every week. It seemed genuine, not merely humorous. It wasn't a comeback when he returned. It served as a reminder that not all stars truly go out. However, beneath all the prosperity, a terrible thing was happening. On the 8 Simple Rules, the morning of September 11, 2003 began similarly to all previous mornings. The renowned Fonz Henry Winkler was a guest star on the set. Everyone was thrilled. The show's main character, John Ritter, was in his typical upbeat mood. He made sure the actors and crew sensed his friendliness by cracking jokes and sharing laughter with Winkler. He didn't appear to be a man in peril. He was enthusiastic, involved, and positive. However, something was already amiss beneath the surface. Nobody could have predicted it. Things swiftly altered later that day. Ritter started to perspire profusely. His face turned pale. He attempted to ignore it while clutching his chest. He continued. He was that person. Diligent, committed, and hesitant to disappoint others. However, the indications were present. Feeling queasy, lightheadedness, chest discomfort. It appeared to be heart attack symptoms. They weren't. He had an aortic dissection, which is a rupture in the heart's major artery. It is uncommon, lethal, and frequently misinterpreted, and that's precisely what took place. Providence St. Joseph Medical Center doctors missed it. It was a heart attack, they believed. They treated him improperly. It exacerbated the situation. Ritter passed out in his dressing room at approximately 4 p.m. Panic spread like wildfire. Members of the cast screamed. On the show, Haley Cuoco, who portrayed his daughter, spoke of utter turmoil. All his acquaintances hurried in. He was barely surviving, unconscious. Emergency personnel moved quickly. They phoned for an ambulance. However, nobody realized that time was running out and that every second was crucial. 54 years ago, in 1948, he was born and he was brought to the hospital across the street. A terrible turn of events. Ritter made a final phone call on the way to the hospital. He dialed Amy Yasbeck, his wife. "I'm heading to the medical facility," he declared. "I love you." His final words to her were those. Doctors began treating him for a heart attack once he arrived at the hospital. Subtil. An x-ray of the chest that might have shown the truth was omitted. He received blood thinners, which is a lethal treatment for aortic dissection. Ritter nevertheless requested a second opinion. However, according to the doctors, there was no time. Amy advised him to have courage in a whisper in his ear. He nodded when they told him to trust them, and they wheeled him in for operation. Surgeons discovered something awful. His aorta was shredded, not simply ripped. There was no way to fix the damage because it was so great. The opportunity to save him was past. The earlier treatment had made matters worse. Later that evening, he passed away. The time of John Ritter's death was precisely 10:48 p.m. His 55th birthday was in 6 days. A life with so much more to offer that ended abruptly. His family was crushed by the news, which also surprised fans in Hollywood. Amy Yasbeck filed a $67 million wrongful death claim, despite her grief. She claimed that Ritter's actual condition was not identified by the hospital or 2 physicians. The amount was calculated using Ritter's estimated future income, $350,000 for each show. For a show that is anticipated to run for 7 years, she felt that he may have been rescued with only 1 test and 1 accurate diagnosis. The case revolved around the missing chest X-ray. Someone had ordered it. It was never finished. The hospital and 8 other medical professionals reached a settlement of $14 million before the trial had started. $9.5 million of those were paid by Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. Amy didn't stop there either. In an attempt to get justice, she took the battle to court. The legal struggle went on for a month. It was emotionally intense, difficult, and public. Ritter's family, friends, and co-workers all provided testimony. The jury rendered their decision in 2008, both DRS. Matthew Lodish and Joseph Lee were cleared. 9 people cast not guilty votes. 3 people didn't agree. Under tremendous pressure, most people thought the doctors had done their best. Ritter's condition was already too far gone.